All right, so my CodeBlocks installer is complete, so I'm switching over. And I would like to say, I guess, just open the program, right? Yes, I'd like to run it. Installer integrity check has failed. Incomplete download. Okay. You know what? I'll try. I don't know what's happening with our network, but once in a while I get those errors. So I just I guess I'll try to download it again during the break. And has anyone downloaded successfully and it started running? Yes. Okay. Oh, yeah. So you're luckier than I am on this piece. So I'll again when we take a break, I will try to download it and make sure that we can restart it from that point on. So for now, let's just stay with the presentation. It's just, I apologize that our network sometimes it gives us those types of troubles. Anyway, so back to the talk about procedural programming. Essentially, in procedural programming, what we generally deal with is a set of variables and a set of functions. Okay, functions are essentially placeholders for executable code, and of course the variables are placeholders for data. Now the variables look like this to begin with. Variables must be declared, and they have the data type and they have the name. So we pick and choose names for our variables, and we decide what data types should we use when creating those variables. Integer data type, of course, like this here, represents just a number, which can be positive or negative. Double, of course, is the double precision floating point number, which allows us to deal with fractional numbers and do computations with those real numbers. And structures, which we will be covering later in our program, are essentially aggregate data types or the data types that we define ourselves. And like I said, the player or dealer could have multiple pieces of data which we would like to associate together and use multiple pieces of data by referring to the data under one name, right? So player can have a score and player can have a name. It's still part of the same concept, the player. The dealer could, be responsible for a whole bunch of different things, and of course it will also have different pieces of data. However, we would like to recognize it as a concept. And functions, which are the actions, the realization of actions, such as shuffle, deal, bet, hit, and stand, and so forth, they have names that we choose. These are examples of function calls. Essentially, how do we start using them at runtime? And today we're going to discuss functions in great detail. The functions typically take parameters, okay? And we will discuss the mechanisms of passing parameters, what types of parameters are available, and generally speaking, how parameters can be helpful in our process of program design. So all of this is still a design stage, but then of course at some point you say, okay, great, I'm done with my design, I think I've made my initial decisions, and we move into the implementation stage and we begin to write code. So functions. A C program is a set of variables and functions, and that's pretty much all of the building blocks that are available. If you take it further down to the next stage and say, okay, I've heard that there's also C++, which adds object-oriented features to C programming language, then you'll realize that anything that you do in C++ is still just another layer of abstraction on top of variables and functions, but still you still have only these two components to build your programs. It's variables and functions. So that's why I think that our discussion of procedural programming or functional programming or procedural or structural, these are all interchangeable terms. We're going to focus at the beginning quite great deal on variables and functions. And functions encapsulate computations. And so, unfortunately, since I failed to download my code blocks, I will go back to using Visual Studio, but we should have no problem moving the code that we write inside Visual Studio to code blocks environment with just one copy and paste, and that should work pretty well, and we can continue on with that platform. Okay, so in Visual Studio, I cannot really do much without first creating a project, and we've done that in the past already. I've demonstrated it. In code blocks, it will be somewhat similar, and we are going to create code blocks project once we have it installed. But for now, I'm going to do this option, file new project, and create new project in Visual Studio, which is Microsoft version of C and C++ compiler, alongside with other technologies. When you open, and hopefully you see something similar to what I have, make sure that you select Visual C++, because you can also have other programming languages included with your Visual Studio install, and make sure that you select an empty project. Like I said before, we don't want any help from our compiler. Today we're going to say C123, and this is of course our week 3 set of presentations, and we're going to give the name to our project. And we're going to, I normally uncheck create directory for solution. Directory for solution is mostly helpful when you have a more complex project with multiple programming language platforms involved in that project, and for us this is unnecessary, just like an additional layer that we don't need. And we obviously not using source control, so I'm just going to click OK and move on. All right, so an empty project and specify location for it, right? So this is going to create my empty project. It's running its configuration, right? And then the next thing is to go to View, okay, and View Solution Explorer, okay? In code blocks, same option, View, and then display the manager window, which will give you access to your project. Here, the first thing that we do is to add a file to the set of source files. And we're going to say add new item to source files. I'm right-clicking on source files and saying add new item, and it's going to open this wizard. Make sure that you select C++ file, okay, the type of file that we want to create. And as I said before, I would like to keep my source files under src, right down there. I'm adding another layer to the location, and I will rename source.cpp, which is the name of my program files, to main.cpp, because I know I need a file where the main function is located. So add that quickly. I mean, it actually gets open immediately. I will type include IOStream, right? And then I will type, let me close this. You can always close the other panels that you see without any harm, because you can go view and reopen whatever you want later on. You should learn how to do that, and obviously it saves space. And we're just going to say int main, which is a function, so it needs empty set of parentheses. We're going to say return 0, which is a success code returned by our program, and then we're going to say system pause, which will prevent the console window from closing in front of our eyes before we get a chance to see what's going on. This is by the way, an example of function call to a system function, and to make the system function available, we also need to include another system header, which is cstdlib. Okay, cstdlib. Okay, so this is our setup, and of course, first things first, we're gonna say stdcout character output device. This is output operator, and we're just going to say hello, just to make sure everything works. \n will make it look like new line at the end of this hello, and we're going to save everything, Control S or file save, and then we're going to say build. Same thing is going to happen in code blocks. You will have an option to build your project or build your solution. So if everything's okay, so that every statement has a semicolon at the end, and we put everything together, and everything builds and there are no error messages in the output window, then we can say debug, and we have two options to start debugging or start without debugging. Either one should be fine at this point. You choose, and as you can see, it prints a message. I would normally go to properties and go to options and say that I want quick edit mode, which would allow me to easy copy and paste from this character output window. In addition, of course, for our convenience, I'll update the font to make it a little bit more readable and make it more enjoyable for your view by setting some colors like that. So hopefully this is readable. So there it is, hello. Then there's a new line, which was output, and then we have press any key to continue, which is the result of like us saying system pause, which executes a command line command pause, which is available on all systems, and when you hit enter, it closes. All right, so we have some working environment, and like I said, I plan to install code blocks after the break, and then we should copy and paste everything that we do here into a project in code blocks, and that should work exactly the same way. So anyway, that's our starting point.